Hello everyone, my name is Phawx. This is the latest version of Ubuntu running on the Neo. For the most part, everything was pretty simple to get set up. Once you're in, you're going to have a portrait-based display, so you will have to change that. For orientation, this will be all blanked out, so you do have to select fractional scaling, and then you'll be able to rotate the display, and then you can do portrait left, at which point everything kind of scales correctly and looks good. I also installed Manjaro and a few other distros, but whenever you do rotation, the touch doesn't rotate automatically. The latest version of Ubuntu did do that automatically, so that was one nicety. Obviously, it's fixable in any distro, it's just that this one worked out of the box. Also, Steam has a kind of default Debian build, and even though it works on other distros, it's kind of my go-to. You can see that I have mouse working here. The mouse is being facilitated by the Steam itself, which is through, you can do it through big picture mode or outside of that. I am doing big picture mode as well. So if you were to press the home button, which is the Xbox button on the controller, which is right here, that should bring up Steam big picture mode. And it's making a liar out of me. There we go. So once we're in here, you can kind of just maneuver around pretty easily. I've installed a bunch of games, and we'll be touching base on a few of these, and we'll kind of just dial right through them. The only thing that's kind of important to make note of is that for some games, when you go into manage, the only other thing you want to do to go to is forcing Steam Play. I am using the latest experimental version of Proton here. You can also select other versions, and there is a Proton wiki of sorts that people kind of update, letting others know which ones are working, which version of Proton is working. Sometimes there will be regressions. For what it's worth, the latest version of Proton is pretty snazzy. I'll go ahead and exit Steam big picture mode right there. It's going to take a little bit for Steam to kind of go ahead and let that mouse work again. Now, obviously, the touch works. So if we go into Firefox, there are methods to bring up the virtual keyboard, as you can see right here. It's not the best. There are other boards like onboard that you can do, and also then map this particular button to there. Right now I have this particular mapping for the Steam overlay, so I'm going to kind of keep it as that for right now, so that whenever I want to mess around inside of games, I'll just be pressing this, which can also facilitate other things. That is pretty much it. Everything works out of the box. If we go here and we take a look at like brightness control, we can see that we can dial the brightness up. The only thing that's kind of weird here is sound. So sound is maxed out, but it is extremely low. You're not going to be able to hear anything unless I plugged it in, but I'll kind of just touch base and talk through a few of the little points that I've already tested a few different games, and there's some notes that I would like to kind of touch base on as we're going through there, so it doesn't really matter, but it's more just for your info. You could also just use a USB-C headphone jack or a 3.5mm up on the top to output sound. Sound does work, it's just extremely low. For the most part, everything is fine. The virtual keyboard on here isn't as good as it is on Windows, so potentially people are going to have to look for a better solution or make a better solution. It's serviceable as it is right now, but largely, especially when you're going through terminal and stuff, it is not good. You don't have tab completion here, which is it just feels not great. So there is that, but that's just basically a quick look that Ubuntu is working. All the features of it are working, especially if we just go like put it to sleep. Suspend. There we go. Haha. As we would want, none of the buttons do wake it up. We want to press the power button here to wake it out of its sleep mode, and it does. And then when we go here, you can just enter your passcode to get in, and then you're back in. So suspend works. That all works well. I've already tested some TDP stuff in a kind of roundabout way. So you can see that I'm at 72% battery life here. I ran a game for an hour that I knew what it consumed on Windows side, and for what it's worth, even though there is that wrapper layer with DXVK, DVXK. It's a DirectX to Vulkan wrapper. Even though that wrapper is happening, there really isn't any particular change, but there are some games that have better performance. Alright, without further ado, we're going to go ahead and start taking a look at games that are running via Proton via Ubuntu. So this is Linux gaming on the Neo. Let's get to it. just so you can hear the sound quality and how low it is.
Excuse me. How much longer? Somebody meeting me here? Excuse me. It's Booker DeWitt. I guess you're expecting me?
I'm probably going to die here. But after I'm done dying, I'm going to show you my settings, and it's low settings and 800p. Kind of funny that once you know how to... I wasn't talking the entire time, just so focused on the fight. But even if we were taking a look at frame rate before and after, let's go ahead and take a look at my settings here, just so you can see. So I am running full screen, 1280 by 800. Render, what is this? Auto detect, best rendering settings. Quality settings is low. If I go to advanced, everything else is low here. Access granted. The one thing worth pointing out here is that you can clearly see that the GPU is almost constantly pegged. But that's pretty good and what we want to see. Our CPU frequency is actually pretty low. If I'm taking a look at this right, it looks like we should be running around about 15 watt here, or 12, 13 watt. Now, the other thing worth noting here is that I'm not changing TDP at all. So all these TDP settings that you're seeing here are the defaults, which is basically more or less 17 watt. But let's go on to the next game. Unfortunately, Oblivion is not working for me. When I do start up the game, I get the menu, but then when I press play on the menu, it just fails right after that. Kind of similar to how Fallout 4 launches. So when I launch this, there's going to be a little menu on the PC version where you get this little prompt that you can make the settings. When I press play here, now when on Oblivion, once I press that play button, it kind of just fails out instantly. In Fallout 4, it actually goes into the game. It's worth pointing out here that Fallout 4 was failing on me up until I installed the latest message drivers, but after that point, it was running fine. Also, I don't know if my memory is correct and I didn't check the video. I tend to think that performance is better here. Now, again, we're running at 17 watt versus the 15 watt or whatever test that I was running prior. But you can still clearly see that we have low shadow resolution here. But frame rate is really good. So it is full 800p. It's pretty evident when we see that straight line right there. And also just, you know, the aliasing that's going on here. So this is full 800p. It's just low settings and then also low shadow detail. But otherwise, you know, we're almost consistently getting 60 FPS, which I feel like is a big bump over what I did previously. Let me go and shoot this guy in the face. Am I all out of AP? No. Well, I didn't shoot him in the face. I got shot in the face. Anywho, really good performance here. This is a good showing as well, along with Dark Souls 3. So it does seem like there are some standout DirectX 11 games that make a huge benefit from going over to Vulkan and getting those benefits on AMD's GPU. It just seems extremely evident. Anywho, let's go on to the next game. It's unfortunate that the HUD that I have doesn't apply on every game. There might be a way that I have to force that. Because I don't really run many games on Linux, I don't really have the same tool set that I have as on Windows. So I just took a very quick glance at what I could use to show some stuff on the screen. And I found a tool called Mango HUD, which seemed to fit the bill, and you can make the configuration changes so that it's global. And they said it only supported Vulkan, which is fine because we're wrapping all of our games in Vulkan, but this particular game maybe is running OpenGL, and which is why it wouldn't be working. Maybe same case for Dead Cells as well. So this is a big old error right there. What's funny is this also happened in Resident Evil 3 right in the beginning, so it almost seems like this is a video file that's being played, because a video file that was being played in Resident Evil 3 had this same error that happened. So it's pretty wild to see that happen again. This is Resident Evil 7. Still kind of glitchy here. Let's see if it fixes itself. It was totally a video file that was playing. So wild. But yeah, you can see as soon as it needs to actually render anything, it's fine. Now this just may be the case that, you know, perhaps what the best case solution would be is to dual boot your system. Because if you're dual booting, you can get the best of both worlds, right? Like maybe some games don't actually work very well or have errors like you've seen before. But then there's some games like Dark Souls 3, which I'm very clear run better on Linux than they do on Windows. So that Vulkan wrapper is really just doing a bunch of work, which, you know, I should actually take a look at using the wrapper on Windows itself and take a look and see if that helps performance. Anyway, this is kind of just a little demo of showing games that are running and a very quick dip into performance. This is not a very in-depth look at games on Linux. It's just seeing how they run, where errors are, and if there's performance gains or not. Just trying to get to the scene that should be a little bit harder to render with all the little grass blades and stuff. So before we go there, just let's see if we can take a look at the graphics settings. So you can see that we are 800p. Automatic rendering adjustment is on, but quality settings are low. But we are running full 800p. This is the particular setting that kind of tanks performance, but it's not too bad. All right, so that's just been my quick look at the Aya Neo. One good thing is that this particular button up here, if you double tap it, it'll actually, bring you out to this particular little menu so that you can X out of stuff in this particular regard. So it's almost like a nice little task manager kind of already built in and mapped pretty nicely to these buttons. So that's pretty much it. We can get out of here real quick. Also with Steam, the mouse mode is already kind of built in, so you don't have to go and find it, though you could look and find your own mouse converter for controller support on Linux itself, but Steam does support it out of the box, so it is relatively straightforward. You will need a keyboard and mouse to at least get set up initially. Also, anything that you're going to be doing through terminal, you really are going to want a keyboard. It's pretty bad with the virtual keyboard, especially just typing everything out. And then if you make one mistake, you can't like up arrow even. So either find a better virtual keyboard or I don't know. It's just have a keyboard. I'll do a speed test for you real quick just so you can see. And again, everything just kind of just worked. And now this is not working on me. There we go. So the good thing about the Intel AX200 drivers is that they just work. So you can see that I have higher bandwidth now. I actually upgraded just recently, but speed-wise, it's fantastic. So all of this stuff literally just works out of the box. There's a few things that you have to tweak to get Linux running, but I could totally see reasons why you would want to dual boot, especially because performance seems to be better in some games, especially some DirectX 11 games. That is pretty much my look at Linux running on the Aya Neo. As always, guys, thank you for your time, and thanks for watching.